Good morning, everyone, and welcome in this webinar about solutions to improve urban air quality. My name is Eugenia Mansutti, and I work for the European Covenant of Mayors Office, and I'm here with two colleagues from the International Urban Cooperation Unit, Silvia Salini and Veronica, who are also connected with us today. And today's topic is air quality. This is one of the webinar series of the International Urban Cooperation. And today we are tackling air quality from the perspective of how to make healthier cities. We have a very dense and interesting agenda, tackling actually air quality, highlighting how this challenge is common to urban areas everywhere in the world. I guess you could all familiarize with the agenda and the description of this webinar, but we decided to focus on this topic linked to sustainable urban development, as exposure to outdoor air pollution causes millions of deaths every year, and urban populations are exposed to poor air quality due to the concentration of different air pollutants from different sectors and originating from different areas inside and outside the territory and the competencies of the cities. As to successfully address air pollution in cities, there is a need to shift to more sustainable ways to address different sectors like transport, energy supply, public spaces design and management. We thought about designing this agenda for the webinar today, providing an overview of the main pollutants for urban areas and to address different kind of solutions that have been implemented in different areas of the world. So in this program today, we will start with a short presentation from my colleague Silvia on what is the IUC program and where this webinar is taking place, in which context. And then we will have a presentation from Enrico Pisoni from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, the scientific body of the European Commission, about main sources and solutions of air pollution in cities, using the example of Europe, but addressing pollutants that then are very relevant also for the other cases, and you will see addressed in the presentations from our guest cities today. And then we will have a presentation from the city of Grenoble-Alpes Métropole in France, from Gabriel Voisin-Fradin, about traffic management solutions that the city is implementing. And we will then go to the presentation of Mr. Ajay Nagpure, who is head of the air quality department in the city of Surat in India, about the Clean Air Action Plan the city developed, and also an overview of what are the main air quality challenges in the context of the city of Surat. And ending this round of a very inspiring presentation with Young Lee and Yeonjin Cho from the Seoul Metropolitan Government in South Korea, speaking about the challenges and solutions that Seoul is implementing to manage air quality, especially with seasonal peaks and also outlining some emergency measures. This webinar is going to take 1.5 hours this morning, and is going to be managed with a series of presentations and a Q&A session that only takes place at the end of these presentations. But in the meanwhile, we really encourage you to note down your questions as they come in your mind while you are hearing the presentations, and write them in the Q&A tab that you will see on the right corner of your screen. You should see this Q&A tab where you can just type and send the question. I will collect them and will ask them to our speakers at the end of the session. I will also kindly ask you to be muted as participants during the duration of the webinar to make sure that there are no background noises. And please also note that this webinar is being recorded. The recording and the presentations will be made available on the IUC knowledge sharing platform weeks after the event. If you are having troubles hearing us, please note that you can always run a test clicking on Communicate in the tab that is just above in your screen, and run a test for your audio. If something is not working properly, you can also use the chat to let us know, and we will try to solve the problem. I think that's it for the introduction to this webinar. I will then pass now the floor to my colleague Silvia for a presentation of the IUC program.
So thank you, Eugenia. Welcome to all the attendees as well as our distinguished speakers. Really looking forward to hear their presentation of such a diverse and really worldwide perspectives that are going to be that we are going to take through. So as Eugenia rightly said, this webinar is one of the capacity building activities that the IUC program is carrying out. We are now at the last of this first series of webinars. All the previous one are available on our website, www.iuc.eu, as well as this one that will be published, as Eugenia said, within 2 weeks' time. So I will be very quick. I think that most of you already know what IUC is, but for the ones that just got to know us, IUC, which stands for International Urban Cooperation, is a program financed by the European Union to foster sustainable urban development by linking cities worldwide to share solutions on common problems, together involving also private sectors, academia, and citizens. The initiative of international urban cooperation is in line with the major international agreements on climate. In fact, as a reference, we have on one hand side the SDGs, and from the other hand side, to a more European perspective, the new European agenda, the 12 priority themes that are set. In a nutshell, those are the themes that we are working on. As you can see, we take sustainability really 360, dealing on topics that goes from mobility to adaptation and mitigation, from smart cities to poverty and social inclusion. So really, really diverse themes, as well as diverse part of the world. Now you see them very well clustered, but of course the approach that we are trying to take is an holistic approach that consider those themes not only from the environment perspective, but also from the social and as well as the economical point of view. As Eugenia also mentioned, we have three, let's say, main works, streams of works, which we call component. So the first one is the city-to-city cooperation. We have also the inter-regional cooperation and the global covenant of mayor. I will briefly touch upon each one of them just to give you a bit of the flavor of the three. So just some facts and figures. What we call component one, the city-to-city cooperation, and at this moment sees 81 parents already working, that are pairing that sees European cities and not linked with not European cities that are agreeing to cooperate on a common challenge that they are facing for a minimum of 18 months. We are working on European cities from one hand side and 5 major region on the outside of Europe, which are North America, South America, Asia, specifically China, Japan, and India. For what regard and component two, we are, of course, in the frame of the Paris Agreement, trying to move towards the target of CO2 reduction by 2030 and 2050. And component 3 is the regional cooperation that sees European regions working together with Latin American regions. So those are the 3 components. This is the program in a very nutshell. Of course, you are very much welcome to go on the website to see more. We have a resource page with all case studies, as well as I said, the webinars that we already developed and financing publication that might help you. We are also invite you to register to the newsletter to just be updated on what's coming next. Without taking more time, I'll give the floor back to Eugenia so that we can start to dive into the topic. Eugenia, back to you.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Silvia. So thank you very much for your presentation. And to participants, if you have also questions on the IUC, you can still write them in the Q&A. We might find a way to also address them at the end of this webinar. Or you are most welcome to visit the website, as Silvia said. So I will now kick off the core of the presentations of this webinar, passing the floor to Enrico Pisoni, who is going to present the work the Joint Research Center is doing to map the main polluting sources that are relevant for European cities, but as you will see, also for cities in other regions of the world, because at the end, that's also the spirit of the IUC. Most challenges are very similar, and some solutions can be applied in different regions and provide very similar results. That's also the spirit of the city pairings that are very inspiring. And then, so Enrico Pisoni is going to do the presentation, and Fabio Monforti is going to be here for replying to questions afterwards.
Hi, my name is Enrico Pisoni, and I'm working together with these 2 colleagues, Philippe Tonise and Fabio Monforti Ferrario, on air quality in Europe. And in this presentation, I will tell you about a study we did recently to understand which are the sources of pollution in European cities. So we call it Air Quality in Europe Overview, Issues and the Way Forward. So as we know, Europe's air quality is improving, but still we have a problem for particulate matter, nitrogen oxide and ground level ozone. And this still causes serious impact on health, especially in the urban environment. There are some estimations done to see premature death due to pollution, and in some recent estimation for EU28, we have roughly 400,000 premature deaths due to mainly PM2.5. And also we have issues linked to eutrophication, so, well, things are improving, but still air pollution is an issue. And we can also estimate in terms of money, and we see that there are really huge costs due to pollution. We can look at the direct cost, kind of 24 billion euro per year, due, for example, to lack of productivity because people get ill due to pollution. But if you look at the indirect cost, for example, due to premature death, well, the range goes to 100 billion euro per year. So it's really also an economic damage. If you look at the situation, we know that there are possible solutions to improve air quality, so there are effective measures. And if you look at PM10, for example, you know that you can do measure on energy efficiency of buildings, or you can act for cleaner industrial processes, district heating, promoting substitution of old stoves, public transport that is in some way increased. So there are solutions, but as we know, it will depend a lot on where you are. So there is no single solution that you can use everywhere in every city in the world, but it depends a lot on where you are. And this is a bit the core of the work we did for this PM2.5 Urban Atlas. This was published quite recently, and what we tried to do for 150 cities in Europe was to check three aspects. As a first step, we try to understand if the pollution that you have in a city comes from local sources or external sources. So is my pollution only linked to urban level emissions, or it depends on for example, transboundary pollution? As a second step, we try to understand which are the key activities sectors responsible for pollution. Is mainly traffic, residential sector, agriculture. And then as a third step, we try to analyze for each city which is the optimal area for taking measures. So is it sufficient to take action in a small area of the city, or you need really the whole city, the functional urban area, the region, and so on. And you see in this map all the cities that we checked, so you can recognize some of the main cities in the EU28. And for example, one of the first analyses we did in terms of general view was to see the city contribution. That means to understand when you see, for example, 50, the red points, it means that in that city, 50% of the PM2.5 pollution can be controlled with city-level measures. While if you go to 2030, it means that the local pollution can be controlled, but you really need to coordinate your effort also with your surrounding cities, because only 20%, in the case of 20, can be controlled with urban level measures. And so this already helps you to understand the scale that you should select for your analysis. We also checked the sectoral dimensions. So for example, we checked where agriculture is very important, and you see all on the bottom right figure, or the red point where the agricultural sector is quite important, specifically to produce the secondary component of PM2.5. And also you have transport, that is on the top right part, and there you see that the red spots are mainly the big city, the bigger cities. That was what we saw up to now was a general view, but we also did analysis for each single city. And this is the type of analysis that we produced in this atlas, where you have the city on the top left area, where you see also the area that we define for our analysis, that is the so-called city core plus commuting zone. Then also we had other analysis based on measuring station or emission, but the key graph is what you see in the center with that darker background. And there, as you can see, we did two types of analysis again, one geographical and one sectoral. For the geographical, you see now, you can see that we define the contribution that come from the Brussels area, from Belgium, from transboundary pollution, but also we had an analysis in terms of sectors. So there you see if the pollution depends on transport, that is the red part, industry, the yellow part, agriculture, and so on. So it's really a way to understand the key sources of pollution in your area, both linked to the geographical or the sectoral dimension. And we did this analysis for 150 cities, but in reality, it can also be produced for other cities. So if you download the Sherpa tool, that it is the tool that was used to produce the atlas, you can work also on other cities. Finally, we got 3 key messages from this analysis on 150 European cities. So what we found is that local action at city scale are an effective means to improve air quality. In fact, there are cities where 50% of pollution can be controlled locally, but also air quality plans are city-specific, so it really depends on where you are to decide on which type of action to take. And finally, what we found is also that agriculture is a key sector because mainly of the contribution it has on the secondary pollution. If you're interested, you can go on this link and download the Urban PM2.5 Atlas and also the Sherpa tool. And please note also that the Sherpa is currently available for Europe, but can be extended to cover other parts of the world. Last slide is about our work we are doing in connection with the Covenant of Mayor, and specifically we are trying to understand the trade-off and synergies between the Covenant of Mayor measures that are done for greenhouse gas mitigation and air quality. So what we know is that the sources of greenhouse gases and air pollutants are the same at the city scale, and so really we want to see what happened to air quality because of the Covenant of Mayor mitigation measure on greenhouse gases. So we are working on a quantitative evaluation of the air quality co-benefits of the measures planned in the COM, and what we found is that co-benefit exists in general, and this is true mainly for efficiency measure, but also there are possible trade-offs for specific measure. An example, biomass, diesel, and so on. So what we are doing also is to do statistical analysis, but also to develop a tool that will help signatories to be aware of possible trade-offs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, to Enrico for the presentation. And as I was saying before, Fabio will be here to answer questions in the Q&A. So feel free to use the Q&A tab on the right corner of the screen to note down your questions. For the participants that have been joining during the presentation, welcome to this webinar. We are now going to the experiences from cities about their own air quality measures, or how they are tackling those pollutants that were just presented and others. What are the local sources of air pollution and possible solutions? And all these presentations will also do an overview of what are their own challenges. So it will be also interesting to make a comparison then and to summarize it a little bit at the end of the webinar. So I'm now passing the floor to Gabriel Voisin-Fradin, who is going to guide us through the measures implemented in the city of Métropole, of Grenoble Métropole in France. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I will present you the traffic management solutions to improve air quality in Grenoble. Air quality solutions are coordinated within the framework of the Air Climate Energy Local Action Plan. This is a cross-cutting approach to align with the objective of a plus 2 Celsius degrees maximum, and which integrates several plans such as energy, mobility, development, or waste management master plan, but also a local food partnership. The objective of this Air Climate Energy Local Action Plan are to adapt to climate change with the climate plan objectives of greenhouse effect gas reduction, energy consumption reduction, or greater renewable energy share. But also an objective of air quality with reduction of NOx, particles, and COV. The Air Climate Energy Local Action Plan have 5 major axes of action: adapt the territory to climate change, invest in energy transition and air quality, and this is the one we will focus on, share and develop the territory's resources, involving stakeholders, and building an exemplary city. So the Axe 2 on invest in energy transition and air quality is mainly about mobility, as you can see, with a first action, which is alternative transport to private car, to promote walking, biking, public transport, multimodal transport, car sharing, and carpooling. The second point is about promoting less polluting vehicles with natural gas or electrical vehicles, for individuals but also professionals. There is also the better organization of deliveries downtown with a urban delivery hub and an action to limit the place of the car within the city. So the mobility master plan integrated within the air, climate, energy local action plan focus specifically on mobility to get free from fossil energy pollution, to make mobility more accessible, to promote the change of behavior, limit the place of cars, promote active and share ways of transport, and improve connections. So the multimodality is supported with better use of rail facilities, better nexus of transport, a shift of the behavior toward more active and or public, optimized transport time for motorized vehicles, and better connection within and out of the metropolitan area. But the idea is also to consider mobility as a service and rather than facilities. So big efforts are done to optimize and secure the existing facilities, but also to deploy a set of services to support the change of behavior toward new ways of mobility. Of course, public transport has been developed with tramway lane and bus lane and with a hierarchized network. And investment have been done to shift from diesel buses to gas and electric buses. And these are the next acquisitions with electric and natural gas buses. But a big effort is done to promote the use of bike. So there is a city bike service with parking service, more than 7,500 bikes to rent from 1 day to 1 year, with a very diverse fleet with cargo, children's or electrical bikes, and more than 2 million rentals days in 2017, and probably much more right now when you see the growth of the use of these services. There is a large range of parking facilities to promote the use of a bike with hoops, but also closed lockers, and a master plan to build new lanes of bike. As you can see, there are 4 main axes with 44 kilometers, and it has needed more than 12 million euros investment in the last 5 years. We develop a specific visual identity and services areas to promote the use of bike. This identity is very innovative and help to be recognized by the car drivers. This is also about car sharing and carpooling. So there are some small facilities, but also the promotion of the car sharing and pooling. The regulation of the speed limits, which has passed from 50 to 30 km per hour in most of the municipalities, which help creating meeting zones. So with 30 kilometers, the respect of rules and other users is much higher, so we can have some mixed places for pedestrians such as for cyclists. There is also a low emission zone, which is a restriction to car circulation, depending on the polluting rates. So for the most polluting vehicles, they are already forbidden since 2017, and then the 5 following categories will be or have been already restricted year by year, with the idea to get free from diesel cars in 2025. But of course, we need some aid to professional and individuals to shift from diesel to low emission vehicles. Facilities, so there is 1 hydrogen station and 27 electric charging stations. And a general project to revitalize the city center of Grenoble with streets which have been renewed with, for example, a major axis very busy with more than 10,000 vehicles per day, which has been transformed with a big axe for biking and on both sides for public transport. Then metro mobility, which is an application, mainly an application to inform about the various way of transport available in the city, mainly used by smartphone. The agency of mobility is also to promote by events, to promote the shift of mode of transport by organizing events, advising the people. One of the main events is Fête du Vélo, meaning do biking. So a lot of bikers meet together and cross all the city together. And there is an offer of a multi-mobility pass, which help to buy tickets from any kind of way of transport. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Gabriel, for this presentation. And thank you a lot also for putting the axis on what the city is doing to help shift of mobility modes and helping citizens to do this change. We received a few questions for you that will be asked in the Q&A. And it will be also an occasion to stress a bit some of the elements you presented here. So to continue with our program and to leave enough time for the Q&A, I will now pass the floor to Mr. Ajay Nagpure from the city of Surat, who is in charge of the development of the clean air quality plan of the city. And you can share your screen, Mr. Nagpure, and go through your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Ajay Nagpure. So I'm working for a Surat city right now, developing a clean action plan. So you might aware that India is having about 37% of global premature mortalities associated with the air pollution. And here are some numbers, like every year about 1.2 million people die prematurely just because of the air pollution. And these are the estimation by the global burden of disease. And sometimes we do not believe on these numbers. We feel that these are the estimation, but if you can see the numbers in the hospital, so these are the numbers from the OPD, the outpatient department hospital, outpatient unit of the respiratory unit of this one hospital of Delhi, showing that air pollution related the respiratory patients have been increased 300% between 2005 and 2014 and 15. So this is an alarming situation in our country. So Therefore, I think that recently Government of India has launched a National Clean Air Action Program, with having a target to reduce the air pollution emissions by 25 to 30% by 2024, considering 2017 as a base year. In that program, they have identified about 122 cities as a non-attainment cities, which are not following the air pollution standards norms from long time. So that includes Surat. Surat, where I'm working for developing a clean action plan. Surat is the city from the Gujarat state of India, in the west part of the India. So it's a highest growing city in terms of urbanization. And here are the numbers. I think I just put in the PM 2.5 concentration from 2006 to 2018 for Surat. And this green line is showing the WHO guideline for PM10, and this red is the Indian Air Pollution Board standards. And you can see that Surat air quality is violating both WHO and CPCB, the Central Pollution Control Board of India standards from long time. So the situation in India and Surat is not good. But I think that, that air pollution came as a recent. I feel for a policymaker or a city manager, they don't consider it's a big problem. This is a reality in the most developing countries. So therefore, and sometimes they assume that water is the major problem or some other factor is the other problem. So that's what I thought, that why can't I present them the health risk result with the all kind of variables in a one graph, with environmental and other factors. So this is my calculation. So these are my calculations. So I estimated the health risk associated with the different risk factors for Surat. And you can see that air pollution is the one of the leading cause of premature mortalities in Surat. So these are the some things, but I think the problem which Indian cities are facing for a policy formulation, because they do not have enough data to support. And for example, in India, we do not have that much money to support a different intervention. For example, a big transportation project or some big infrastructure project to mitigate the air pollution. So what I'm thinking that it is better to identify three different types of goals. That one is the short-term goal, where we can target the policies and the sector which is easily recoverable, or we can control air pollution easily in that sector, and the long-term goal and mid-term goal. And accordingly, we can act. For example, the transportation, because nowadays in India, everybody is talking about the transportation, the electric mobility. But that transportation could be a good solution for the air pollution, but it's not a short-term goal. The current situation in Indian cities is very bad. So you can't only rely on the transportation sector to mitigate the air pollution. Similarly, the industry and the other sectors. So I feel that instead of putting transportation in this immediate goal to reduce the air pollution, we can make it as a long-term goal. And there are other sectors like the construction sector, municipal solid waste burning, and the household cooking. These could be an easier sector, because the money required for the solid waste management and the construction mitigation is less. So that's what, and for all kind of, because that all these policies require a baseline data, and most of the Indian cities are not having a baseline data with a proper scientific understanding. Therefore, what I'm doing, I'm trying to just develop. I'm trying to develop a different kind of methods with existing data, which can give us the numbers in terms of the quantity of pollution released by the different activities. So that is how I'm working in Surat, and after that, I'm going to identify the different sectors contributing to the inbound air pollution, and based on that contribution, I'm going to identify the short-term, long-term, and mid-term goal for the Surat air pollution mitigations. So for this, I just started working on the industrial sector. So for industry, I just collected data from the different sectors, and that I'm developing, because these days, air pollution, because now people are only considering the city, they are working on the city-centric idea. So I feel that instead of the city-centric idea, why can't we work on the intra-city level, just to identify the different zones? So for that, I'm just trying to collect the data at the level of high resolution level. So this is the map of a Surat city, where I was able to collect the data of the number of economic entities and the manufacturing entities at the ward and village level. Ward is the smallest unit of urban area. So in that way, we can see that these are the high in the polluted industrial manufacturing zone. So we can focus on these area if you want to control the air pollution from the industrial sector. We can talk with these people first. This is the one idea I'm having in my mind. And another thing is that there is a huge there are many people right now using biomass for cooking in Indian cities. You know that as per the 2011 census of India, only 27% population were using LPG for cooking, and 67% were using. I think 73% were using biomass for the cooking. So biomass is the one of the leading cause of air pollution. So therefore, I'm also identifying the people using different types of biomass at the high resolution level. So city can focus on those areas. So this is the firewood consumption of household. This is the Surat map, and these are the surrounding village area. You can see the Surat is having less biomass use, but if you see the surrounding villages, they are using more biomass like firewood. So so after that, I'm estimating the PM 2.5 emissions by the each kind of activity. This is a map of the PM 2.5 map from the biomass use for our cooking purpose. This is one thing, and another thing is for the transportation. I would not talk much, but I'm just similar way. I'm trying to identify the how different neighborhoods or intracity level the infrastructure, the transportation behavior, people are using different transportation mode of transport. So I was able to get this high resolution transportation activity map for the Surat and surrounding area. So for that, I'm collecting different data and developing different methods. And similarly, for the construction sector, I'm doing the same thing. And another thing which I would like to share, this is the most important part I would like to share with you all. So this is, you know, that waste burning is in India, there is in the cities are having about 60 to 70% waste collection efficiency, means 30% today. I think people are not collecting that rest of the 30% waste, so they are accumulating on the street, and that for the reduction purpose, they are city people are just burning the trees. This is one of the leading contributors for the air pollution. So I'm just trying to develop a method which is called the line transit method. So in that method, people walk down the street and then count the number of burning incidents. So these are the my researchers walked on the different streets of the Surat, and they counted the number of burning incidents, their masses on in the Surat area, and they estimated the amount of waste being burned by the people. These are some pictures. You know, you can see the waste burning in the rich neighborhood, poor neighborhood, everywhere you see. These are the pictures from the last summer, I guess. So these are the pictures. You can see this is a rich neighborhood and people are still burning the waste. So I feel that this could be a one target for a Surat city where they can focus to reduce how to improve the waste collection efficiency. That's certainly going to reduce the air pollution emission from the waste burning. So you can see this amount of waste being burned in Surat. So these are the things, and this is one picture from the Google map. So you can see the smoke coming from the waste burning. So for that, what I did. So I just did a survey in a different neighborhood. So this is the methodology which I have developed when I was in doing my postdoc. So this is the method where I I walked on the street and I counted the number of burning incidences on both sides of the road. I consider this is the rectangle, the length of the rectangle, and I assume these both side of household or the commercial area are responsible for this burning. That I consider the width of the rectangle. By using this width and length and number of burning incidences, I was able to get the per square kilometer waste being burned. This is the first methodology in the world where you can get the intracity level of waste burning incident. So for a city, so in this way, I estimated how much waste burning is happening in the city, and which are the means like a sensitive area for the waste burning, and how we can work on those neighborhoods. So this is the work which I did, and what I found that the 66% of the burning is happening in the residential area, following by the industrial area 16%, the commercial area 9%. Similarly, if you see the low income-wise, the low socioeconomic categories burning 55% of waste, followed by the mid 31% and high 14%. And I was also able to get the composition of the waste being burned. This can give us the I think a real picture of the air pollution coming from the waste being burned. And after that, I just developed this kind of emission inventory. So this is the work I'm doing for a Surat. So because time is less, I could have explained more. But this is how I'm working. So I'm just dividing the policies and the sectors into three categories: short-term, long-term, and mid-term. I'm going to propose the policies accordingly. Thank you so much. 10 minutes over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nagpure, for this overview. And also for explaining your process on how you are mapping the sources of air pollution in the city of Surat to develop this plan. It's, I think there will be much more to ask you during the Q&A. I will now pass the floor to Yeonjin Cho and Youngmi Lee from the Metropolitan Government of Seoul for a presentation on what the city of Seoul is doing to manage air quality and especially their measures for emergency and peak pollutants periods. I just want to recall to everyone that may have just joined that there is still the possibility to ask questions to the panelists using the Q&A section. And if you have problems hearing the presentations, let us know and we'll try to solve it with you. Thank you. Yeonjin, we cannot hear you. I think you should unmute your microphone first.
언뮤트 되어 있는데. Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I see.
Thanks.
Okay. I hope this will work better. Okay, I hope you can hear me now. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yoonjin, and I'm speaking on behalf of Youngmi Lee, who is team leader of Air Quality Policy Team in Seoul. Well, it is my great pleasure to share with you Seoul's efforts to improve air quality today. Okay, well, before I go into the details, let me briefly introduce what is included in my presentation. First, I will begin with the current status of PM 2.5 in Seoul to help you understand the air quality in our city. Then I will introduce Seoul's efforts to reduce fine dust, including the regular and emergency measures. Lastly, I will explain about Seoul's seasonal control scheme to further strengthen our efforts to reduce fine dust level. Okay. And first of all, the current status of PM 2.5 in Seoul. Well, Seoul has been seeing a decrease of PM 2.5 levels over the past 4 years, and in 2016, the level was 26 microgram per cubic meter, and it fell to 25 in 2017 and 23 in 2018. But in 2019, the level rose slightly to 25 microgram per cubic meter because of poor climate conditions that led to increased number of days with high PM 2.5 levels. And actually, if you take a look at the number of days per month exceeding 50 microgram per cubic meter in the past 4 years, you can see that the number increases during January, February, March, and December, with March marking the highest level. So this is how the PM 2.5 level is in our city. And actually, according to a research about the sources emitting PM 2.5 and their contributions, the heating and power generation was the largest contributor, accounting for 39%, followed by the cars, 25%, fugitive dust, 22%, construction equipment, 12%, etc. And this is actually the structure that we established to lower the fine dust level. And so there are two main efforts to lower the fine dust, which are regular measures and that focuses on controlling emissions from the sources, and emergency measures to respond to high PM levels. However, given that the emergency measures are short-term efforts implemented after the rise of PM level, we also implemented seasonal fine dust control measures to complement the limits of emergency measures. Okay, now I'm going to explain further details about our efforts. So first, the regular measures to lower PM level. In order to lower PM level, we are controlling the emissions from sources. For example, to cut PM emissions from heating and power generation, which accounts for 39% of the emissions, we're expanding the supply of eco-friendly boilers for households and subsidizing installation of low-NOx burners at business sites. Our goal this year is to provide 250,000 eco-friendly household boilers and support the installation of 230 low-NOx burners at businesses. Also, to lower the emissions from cars, which are responsible for 25% of the PM emissions, we are encouraging early scrapping of old diesel cars and subsidizing up to 30 million Korean won, which is 25,000 US dollars. This year, we are hoping to help early scrapping of 60,000 cars. We're also supporting mandatory implementation of low pollution measures for old diesel cars, such as installation of diesel particulate filters, and we aim to support 20,000 cars this year. And also to lower the emissions from construction equipment, which accounts for 22% of our PM emissions, we are subsidizing BPF installation and replacement of engines in old construction machines with new ones. Also, the fugitive dust is also one of our contributors to the emissions, and that is responsible for 12% of the emissions. In order to reduce the emissions from these dust, we regularly inspect the condition of business sites that emit dust, such as construction sites. And for example, we have inspected total 7,200 sites last year. Also, to avoid the rescattering of roadside dust, we are operating all dust vacuum cleaning trucks during the high PM level seasons. Next is emergency measures for high fine dust level. As I mentioned earlier, Seoul is implementing emergency reduction measures on high PM days together with the seasonal fine dust control scheme, which is carried out from December to March next year. The purpose of emergency measures is to improve air quality in a short period of time when you expect fine dust level to surge or when high level continues for days. When emergency measures are issued, three local governments in the metro area, Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi, jointly take actions from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., such as banning the grade 5 vehicles from the streets, closing public parking lots, and shortening working hours of PM-emitting business sites. There are three conditions to issue the emergency measure. For example, if today's average 2.5 PM 2.5 level exceeds 50 microgram per cubic meter, and it is expected to exceed 50 the next day in more than 2 local governments from Seoul, Incheon, or Gyeonggi, then emergency measures will be issued. In 2019, we issued a total of 14 times for the emergency measures. And in March last year, we set a record by implementing the emergency measures for 7 consecutive days. As I said, to further improve the air quality during high PM seasons, we are also implementing seasonal fine dust control scheme. This is an intensive control measure to reduce the frequency and intensity of fine dust levels and lower the baseline concentration by delivering enhanced PM reduction measures from December to March, when fine dust levels soar frequently. As I explained earlier, from December to March, Seoul's monthly average of fine dust levels are higher than other months, and the number of days with high levels actually increased. In fact, in March last year, like I mentioned, Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi carried out emergency reduction actions for 7 days, but the fine dust level still remained higher than normal. So we figured out that short-term emergency measures implemented after the PM level surge had limits. So we found out that we need to control the fine dust during the winter and early springtime. Well, based on the outcome of the research about seasonal fine dust control scheme, Seoul has proposed the introduction of seasonal control to the Ministry of Environment and local government leaders in the metro area. Well, we had several expert consultations and in-depth interviews with relevant stakeholders. And at the public debate, actually, with 1,000 Seoul citizens, we found that 93.4% of the citizens were in favor of introducing seasonal fine dust control scheme. And in November last year, the Ministry of Environment approved special measures for high fine dust seasons, and we have been implementing seasonal fine dust control scheme since then. I believe this was possible because there was a keen cooperation between Seoul, the national government, the local governments, and experts and citizens. The main purpose of the seasonal control scheme is to lower the total amount of fine dust emissions from transportation, heating, and PM emitting businesses, etc., and eventually to protect the health of the citizens by minimizing their exposure to the fine dust. And let me introduce some actions that are implemented as the seasonal control. For example, we are banning the grade 5 vehicles from the streets if they do not have the DPFs installed. And we are implementing alternate no driving day scheme for government official and staff cars. Parking fees at municipal parking lots are increased. Large buildings using massive energy need to limit the indoor temperature to below 20 degrees per winter time. And citizens who save more than 20% of the energy during this season will earn 10,000 special mileage through the Eco Mileage program. And using old construction equipments are limited at construction sites. And we do more frequently dust vacuuming and water cleaning of the roads. And special inspections are conducted to control indoor air quality at facilities for the vulnerable class, such as the daycare centers and the multi-use facilities, such as subway stations. There are actually many other measures that we are implementing to improve air quality, such as low emission zones, intensive control zones, and Fine Dust Institute. But, well, we have time limits today, so I will wrap my presentation for now. Well, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yanjin, for this presentation. And also for outlining, I think it was an important point, and maybe I can use this to kickstart the Q&A section to outline actually the cooperation with different level of governance and different sectors, also involving citizens, especially for what concerns the seasonal fine dust control schemes, and highlighting how this was actually a success factor in your case. I was wondering if I can ask to both Mr. Nagpure for the city of Surat and to Gabriel Voisin, just to start gathering some questions. If you also have, I hear a background noise. Okay, now it's fine. If you also have cooperation schemes in place with, well, as it was also a bit said in the presentations, with different sectors to tackle background pollution and transboundary pollution. How do you do this? How do you involve different sectors of the population and different level of governments? And if you also have seasonal control schemes in place or measures that you take in moments of extreme concentration of air pollution, how do you make this happen in cooperation with different sectors of the society and levels of governance? Maybe I can pass the floor to Mr. Nagpure first.
Should I answer the question which is written in the Q&A section?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the first, I think there is a question about are there any initiative to increase the number of electric two-wheelers in Surat? So I feel that there are.
Sorry, yes, I was just asking a question to you and Gabriel from the city of Grenoble Metropole to just start, and then I will pass to the questions we are receiving. So yes, those will be asked later. I just wanted to know if now, if you also have examples of cooperation. You were also mentioning both tackling air pollution coming from different sources that are not in the competencies of the cities. So that's one aspect, and the other one was transboundary pollution. So my question to you and to Gabriel from Grenoble Alpes Métropole, which is also composed of different municipalities, is how do you cooperate with different level of governance to address air pollution, and also how do you involve different sectors of the society, so citizens and other stakeholders in the city when it comes to, for example, peaks of concentration of air pollution?
Yes, I can start. So I think this is a very important thing, because nowadays what is happening in India, because they are mostly focusing on the cities. So in terms of the transboundary air pollution, there is not much going on. Basically, there are some schemes. It's about like household, this LPG for the clean cooking gas for the household in a rural area. But if you see the policy perspective of the current situation, I think most of the policies and the mitigation measures are only focusing the cities. So that's I think the issues currently India is having. So people are not talking about the transboundary emissions. So I feel that this is a strong need for the India if we really wants to solve the problem. And the another thing is that because it's always important to involve the different stakeholders, and there is not enough going on in this portion also, because this if you see the air pollution discussion, in the most of the time you would find that only the air pollution scientists or the NGOs or these people are discussing the air pollution, but they are not connecting to each other. That's the problem. The bridging is the problem. So therefore, what we thought that, like, recently we did a workshop or the get together of the different stakeholders in this municipal solid waste burning sector. So what we did, we involved from the rack pickers to the city managers to industry people and everyone. Because if we really want to solve the problem, we need to bring all these people, and each one have had a different types of solution and different types of problems. So we started gathering those information from different stakeholders, and now we are going to frame the policies accordingly. And I feel that this is the most important thing for in Indian cities, because there is less bridging is available. So now we are starting these type of activities in Surat.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, and on my side, I can give you a little answer about the involvement of the municipalities. Actually, it was in my presentation. There was a point about the limitation of the speed within the cities, and in fact, this is the competence of the municipal level and not the metropolitan level. So we have more than half of the cities, well, of the municipalities, who agree to regulate and coordinately, that means together, to be coherent with the metropolitan scheme. But it was not under the responsibility of the metropolitan scheme. That is to say, there is like a political discussion between both levels. Then, about how to involve or to work with companies and also individuals. As I show in my presentation, we have sensibilization, aid, regulation, and also facilities. And also to answer to Manon in the QA section, some of the facilities are charging points for electrical vehicles and hydrogen vehicles. And for deploying these hydrogen facilities, we worked with the regional level. So once again, it's another administration level. Then, both for the Air Climate Energy Local Action Plan and the Mobility Master Plan, both of these processes have involved individuals and companies for to be designed. Yeah. So that was my answers.
Okay, thanks a lot to both of you. I'm now going back to the questions that were asked by participants. So a first question that we received was, I think, for Fabio from the JRC, from Karin Buma, about whether the air quality tool developed by the JRC at this moment can also involve actually cities outside of Europe. So I remember that was a point in your presentation, Fabio, that the tool can potentially be extended to other regions of the world. I don't know if you want to expand a little further on this point. What are the potentialities, or what can be actually useful for cities outside of Europe?
Yes, of course, the tool can be expanded to other to basically any city of the world, provided that it's possible to collect reliable and robust data, both on emissions that are if you want, one of the most critical points, getting a correct description, a good description of of the emissions that are taking place in the city. And also, what you also need is a detailed knowledge of the meteorological situation of the city. You also need to understand how the winds, how precipitation happen in the city, and where is the context where in which the city is inserted, for which you need for a kind of trans-urban pollution. We have developed our tools mostly for the European cities, but there is nothing against to develop and to extend this similar approach to other cities. Again, provided that the data are available, that things can. We are starting to develop some cooperation with cities outside Europe for understanding which data are available, how this can be inserted, how can the format of the data can be handled by the tools that we have developed and things like that. But in principle, it's a question of reliability, time, and resources.
Thank you very much. We can hear someone typing. I would ask our speakers or participants here to mute themselves. Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot for your answer. I hope, Karin, this replies to your question. Another question we received for Dr. Nagpure was if there are initiatives in the city of Surat to increase the number of electric two-wheelers in your quality plan. So yes, that's also a question on how maybe you are integrated your actions on transport and your quality, the cleaner plan of the city.
Yes, so I think the Surat city is planning to implement the electric mobility in their action plan. So I think right now they are focusing on the public transportation, but there is a plan to increase the penetration in these two-wheelers and the car sector. So this is the planning of the city.
Okay. Thank you. And a question for all of the cities that we just received that also link with the availability of data at the end, but it's a bit more axed on citizen participation. So that's a question I would ask to all the cities, the panelists, would be if you have any data on citizens' awareness on the health risk associated with lower quality. And yes, about the efforts of engaging cities in tackling air pollution, we heard already something, but if some of you want to elaborate more, it can be a possibility. So I would maybe first give the floor to, Gabriel, then to Mr. Nagpure, and then to Youngmi and Yunjin.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm not sure to have some data on citizen awareness. But of course, we have some action for that, especially toward the children in the schools. So we have some interventions in the schools, and then events for the general public, general people. Like the event I show about the promoting biking. But about data, I can't answer right now because I don't know.
Okay. I see. Mr. Nagpure?
Yes, so I think we have the data and we do have some tools to estimate the health risks at the city level, because this is a very important to just make people aware, because this health, so not only air pollution, but we are estimating and collecting data for the indoor air pollution, outdoor air pollution, water, sanitation, and hygiene, and we are comparing and showing it to the city managers and the public, so that they can assess how air pollution is affecting their life. So this is, yes, so we do have some methods, data for that, those for cities which we are doing study.
Okay, thank you. And Yunjin and and Youngmi, I don't know if you want to also reply to this question.
Okay. Oh yes, we can reply to this question. Well, first, regarding the citizens' awareness on the health risks, well, actually, before we implemented our seasonal control scheme, we conducted a survey to the public, and based on the answers from this survey, that's how we have prioritized our policies. And 95% of the citizens who answered this survey said that they are aware of the seriousness of the PM level. And they think that the transportation emissions, the emissions from the factories or the manufacturing sectors are affecting the air pollution or affecting our city's air quality. And secondly, the citizens' participation. Well, many of these old citizens are aware that they are the victims of air pollution, but at the same time, they can also resolve this problem. So they are actually taking part in various sectors to reduce the PM levels in their daily lives. For example, we encourage the citizens to take the public transportation and save the consumption of energy and heating and air conditioning. And also, we are encouraging the citizens to replace the old boilers with eco-friendly new boilers. So many citizens are actually taking part in these kind of movements. I hope this answers your questions.
Yeah, I think it does. It was a question asked from a participant. Yes, indeed, is as you were both, all three highlighting, it's not only a question of involving the citizens in the decisions, but also, of course, of making them aware of what are the benefits of these actions and how they're going to improve also their lives in the long run.
If I may add a point, I had a look to one of the last Eurobarometers about environmental conscience, and according to the last statistics, air pollution is the biggest environmental concern just after climate change for European citizens. So there is some, at least from European point of view, there is quite awareness of the risk of the air pollution.
Yeah, indeed, yes. In Europe, in the last 7 to 5 years, of course, air pollution, it became very high in the concerns of citizens. And I remember that Dr. Notpure, you mentioned in your presentation that in India there is still some work to do to really raise awareness, even if actually the effects of air pollution are very evident to citizens. I don't know if you or maybe Yanjin want to comment on how high is air pollution perceived as an environmental threat and a health threat in your respective contexts?
I feel that air pollution now, Indian government and people both are, I think, much more aware than the earlier. So I think the people are getting aware, but this air pollution is only the discussion of in the high income society, the high income people, but the low income society, they are still not aware about the consequences of air pollution. So I think I would say they're educated, and this high income people, they are aware about this air pollution and things, but the low income society is still not that much aware. This is one thing for Indian context. And I feel that is very important because they must aware about, because whether recently the government of India has launched this Ujjwala scheme, that is called the clean cooking fuel for the poor people, and that is the basic target for that is to reduce the air pollution. But people are still not using that extent. So it could be because of they do not have awareness, or there could be a reason of the money or something like that. But I feel that people are much better aware than the before, but not that much. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. I don't know if from Seoul you want to also comment on this point. Otherwise, I think there is another question that I would like to ask all panelists. See, there are no more questions from participants. Okay, so maybe I can ask this one. As this webinar is going to be recorded and put online, and many other cities are going to probably access it, I was wondering if I could ask all of you, including Fabio from the JRC, if you could highlight one measure that you found very successful in your actions to tackle air quality, and that you think it will be kind of a low-hanging fruit or something easy to replicate for another city that might just now be starting to collect data on air quality or developing or considering to develop an air quality plan. So what could be an action easy to replicate, but that can also help this city get started in this process? And maybe we can go chronologically with the webinar. So I don't know if, Fabio, you have any ideas from maybe actions that you've seen in action plans of cities?
What we have seen in our studies, more than a single measure, I would focus on a pool of measures that are the energy efficiency and energy saving measures. So we have seen that these measures are good for both climate change and for air pollution. Then it depends of how the city is. I mean, in different cities there will be more or less efficient measures. So this would be translation in more or less efficient practical measure depending on how the city is using its energy. But as a first answer, I would suggest let's have a look if you can save energy. And with this, you are getting, if you want, two low-hanging fruits, one for climate and one for air quality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good point, this synergy and integration of plants. It was also highlighted in the other presentations. And indeed, as you were also saying at the beginning, there are co-benefits and trade-offs that need to be made clear to orientate the choices, the policy choices of cities. Gabriel, I don't know if you want to highlight one measure that you think is particularly successful in your case and can be replicated.
Well, I was thinking about in the same way, that is to say, it depends a lot of what kind of cities, what are its problems mainly. And for example, here in Grenoble, we have mountains all around, so the circulation of the air is quite difficult. And this is the reason why mobility is a big issue, but not only mobility. When I started the presentation, I show you the general framework, which was air, climate, and energy recollection plan, which was a cross-cutting approach. I think that's the main point, to have a cross-cutting approach, and then focusing on the main problem of its own city, which can be very different, as we can see, from an Indian to a Korean to a French or to any kind of city. So that's my point.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, so cross-cutting approach and being sure of addressing the main sources of the city, of course, having a good baseline starting point. Dr. Nagpure, do you also want to comment on this, to suggest one measure that you think can be inspiring for other cities?
I feel that the improving especially in the Indian context, that I would say that waste management would be the low hanging fruit for reducing some extent of air pollution, because most of the Indian cities are having about 60 to 80% of waste collection efficiency. Means like improving a certain amount of waste collection efficiency would reduce about 10 to 20% of the air pollution. And this could be done by involving all the stakeholders directly or indirectly related to the waste management. So this is the one thing I would say that Indian cities needs to focus on.
Okay, thank you very much. Nyanjing?
Okay, I think like I mentioned, carrying out the intensive measures during the high PM level seasons, I think that is one of the most important things that we need to do, and that has also contributed to the success of our actions in Seoul. And to provide more specific action plan that we would like to share with other cities, I think like encouraging or helping the citizens to replace their old diesel cars with eco-friendly cars could be a doable thing for other cities because we would like to phase out the use of diesel cars from our roads to improve our air quality. And I think this could be a doable to other local governments.
Yeah, yes, indeed. The question of diesel cars is very much discussed, and there are indeed many measures in place. Maybe it can be the topic for a next webinar or capacity building activity, including also addressing low emission zones models. I just see there is one last question that we have not addressed, so maybe we can quickly have a round on this one. It is a question about whether any of your cities is relying on citizen science programs or citizen science applications to monitor air quality in your cities. We can still grow chronologically in the answers, so starting from Gabriel.
Yes, so we have a specific experience within a smart city project with handing over scientific material to some active citizen who will be able to make their own measure about air pollution. So that's one action, one experience within a smart city program.
Okay. And Mr. Nagpura?
Yes, I think in India, I think there are some cities which started the citizen science thing, and especially, but nowadays there's low cost sensors. I think the market is increasing in India, and also like again, I'm talking about the waste burning. So the government has launched different apps. If they see if citizens see any kind of waste burning in within a city range, so they'll take a picture and send it to the authorities. So that's the one measure. So this kind of activities are going on in Indian cities.
Okay, thank you. And Yeonjin, I don't know if you want to also take this question.
Well, I think well, I'm not sure whether I understood your question correctly, but were you asking about the data gathered by the public, like such as using the portable applications to monitor the air pollution?
Yes, and to actually, if you're also using apps with citizen science, where citizens are also involved in monitoring air pollution, yes, directly.
Actually, that's kind of different as well because we have like the official stationary and also like roadside monitoring stations, and we do not really have the handheld devices for the citizens to actually monitor the air pollution. So I think that's something that we need to think on for further improvement in our city.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I think.
May I add a point?
Of course, of course.
Even in the GRC, we are involved in this citizen science activity. My colleagues in the laboratory are starting to work with some cities, or in some cases even with some ONGs from citizens, to start to have to solve. To calibrate the sensor and to help them to understand how to a proper monitoring should take place in order to be reliable also from the scientific point of view. We have a quite good cooperation with several with some groups and increasing and we hope to increase in time.
Okay. Yes, and I guess you're also working with some cities that are testing these applications.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Is there any last question or any last remarks from our speakers before we go towards the closing of this webinar?
I think I saw one question. Somebody was asking about the data, how I got the data from my survey and other thing. So I just wanted to tell that for our waste management, I am doing this primary survey, the methodology I mentioned. But for other sectors, I'm utilizing the government available data, like a Census of India, consumer expenditure survey. So, and those data sets having some kind of variables where I'm putting some creativity, and by using those, and some validation, I'm generating these types of maps.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think the person who asked the question. Okay, thank you very much. If there is no other remarks, I think we can go towards the conclusion of this webinar. I'm just checking now. Last time the Q&A section. I don't see any new questions. No? Okay. So, well, thank you very much to all of our panelists for taking the time and for sharing their stories, their actions, and also the challenges and suggestions to other cities. That's also one of the main reasons why this cooperation actually between European and cities in other regions of the world is very successful. And this as you can see now the slide, so this webinar will be made available in the next 2 weeks on the knowledge sharing platform, only for IUC cities, so cities that are part of the program. If you have questions, of course, you can contact us. If you would like to receive more information on the next webinars and also information on the webinars that already took place in the past, don't hesitate to connect to the IUC website. And thank you also a lot to participants for your presence here and your very insightful questions. We hope you had gained knowledge and inspiration from this webinar, and hope to see you in the next capacity building activities. Thank you very much to all of you for being here, and have a nice day or evening.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
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 Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.